So welcome everyone to what we were marketing as Designing Better Spaces. This is going to be a conversation with the Neighborhood Alliance of Central Oklahoma and the City of Oklahoma City's Planning Department. The city's been working on a new zoning code for several years. In our
Right.
office, if you're not familiar with the Neighborhood Alliance, our goal is creating safe, healthy, and attractive neighborhoods for all, where people can live and thrive and love to be. And part of that is really dictated a lot by zoning. So for the last 50 years of the city's history, we have had a strong partnership with the city to make sure residents are engaged, educated, and informed on different policies and decisions that are coming up. And so tonight we are joined by Lisa Chronister and Marilyn Allen from the Planning Department. And they are going to be talking about why the city is creating a new zoning code. And the hope is that this can offer some more clarity to folks. And then I know they have a meeting coming up on March 10th at the Belle Isle Library as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to them.
Okay, thanks. Cassidy, do you want to run our first poll question before we begin?
Yes, I can absolutely do that. Hold on just a second. Okay. So the first question they had is before this conversation tonight, have you heard of the city's code update project?
And while we're waiting for the results to come in, I'm Lisa Chronister. I'm the Assistant Planning Director, and I'm joined by my colleague, Marilyn Allen, who is one of our program planners, and she's been the project manager for our code update project for the past several years. If you've attended any previous code update meetings or activities, one or both of us has probably been there.
The agencies have big plans for the money.
I think your survey results are in too.
Okay.
So it looks like 76% of the folks had heard about it and 24% had not.
Okay, great. Okay, so in this presentation, we're going to concentrate on why we're doing a new zoning code. For those who have heard about the code update project, you might have been in other presentations where we talked about more of the details of what is changing and how it might change. But tonight we're going to focus on the why, because in many ways the why is as important, if not more important, than the actual technical changes. So why are we doing a zoning code? So tonight we'll look at what we've already accomplished with the code update project. We'll talk about why do we need to modernize our code in the first place. I'll cover those two sections. Then Marilyn will take us through a little more detail on our new approach to parking, landscaping, and use regulations, why it is important that those sections be updated as well. And we will take questions at the end. So the city has been working on this update since 2019. Yes, that's a long time ago, but it's a very complex process that's involved hundreds, if not thousands, of stakeholders since 2019. And to do it well and right and in a coordinated manner with everybody takes a lot of time, has taken a lot of time. But over the past few years, as we have continued to develop various potential changes to the overall zoning code, we have completed some early action items, resulting in the adoption of a new sign code in early 2024. We did an ordinance to consolidate our design review committees and commissions into fewer bodies. We did a home sharing ordinance update. We presented that also to Neighborhood Alliance audience about a year ago. And in 2025, May 2025, the accessory dwellings ordinance was adopted, and that allowed for one accessory dwelling by right in residentially zoned properties in the urban core. So we have been focusing our code update work on the urban core of the city. When I'm talking about the urban core, I'm talking about the area identified in the comprehensive plan as the urban medium. That's the area shown in tan on this graphic. So there's, in the lower left is the overall comprehensive plan. It's called the LUDA map, land use typology area map. And then the inset is the urban medium, generally between Northwest 63rd and Southwest 59th, and then from I-44 on the west and I-35 on the east. So we have been focusing our code update work in this area because of the increased demand for infill and redevelopment in this area. If you live in the urban core, you have probably seen it in your own neighborhood or perhaps the neighborhood right next to you. So great demand for infill and redevelopment. We know that from the number of variance requests and rezoning requests that we've received over the past many years. So the next things up for adoption are going to be a new base zones for this same core of the city, the urban medium, as well as new regulations for uses, parking, and landscaping. And we'll talk more about those, the why of that here in a minute. We also want to adopt new standards for rural zones that will provide safer standards for septic systems. So all that's in this next phase. Then later in the process, we'll adopt new base zones for suburban and rural areas of the city. If anybody is on the presentation now who lives in one of those areas, I know folks have asked, well, when are we going to be involved in this? And it's the very next thing. So after we've adopted all these new zones and the related building design and site design standards, then and only then will we adopt a new zoning map for the whole city. So in these initial efforts, no one's getting rezoned. I mean, some of the zoning rules will be changing, but no one's getting rezoned. But at the very end of the process, we'll rezone everybody into the new zones, and there will be plenty of notice for residents when that process begins. So why do we need to modernize our zoning code? For several reasons, primarily because Oklahoma City is growing and thriving. If you've lived here for any amount of time, you've probably witnessed that on your daily drive and in your daily life and work. Growing and thriving in a new development code is an important part of changing with the times. We'll see later some examples of how outdated our code is. A new code will ensure quality development that is compatible with its surroundings. The current zoning code was originally drafted in the 1980s, and it zoned all the city as if it were a suburb, which it's not. A modern zoning code will better guide development to match the individual character of our neighborhoods. And to create a more livable city, we're moving away from the older conventional zoning that separated uses. Like conventional zoning was, residential's over here, businesses over here, schools are over there. But by separating uses, that has just created more traffic congestion. It's affected our air quality, and it's made less livable neighborhoods because in many cases, you have to get in your car to drive to school, work, or shopping. But the new code is designed to integrate and mix uses. And we can do that and ensure that they're compatible using design, better landscaping, and other metrics. The new approach is contextual, considering the unique character of each area of our city and allowing for changing conditions. So just to reinforce that, if we look back over this LUDA map on the lower left, I mean, so purple in the middle, that's downtown, and then the green on the edges, that's our agricultural areas. Obviously, those are completely different contexts, right? And they each have value. But the zoning code, the way it's written now, doesn't recognize or support those differences. And that's something the new code will do. And one reason it's important to update it. So hopefully, when the new code is in, especially in the core of the city, we'll see more integration of different uses where work, shopping, services, and recreation can all coexist and be located closer together. So I wanted to throw in some fun facts about Oklahoma City that I compiled for another recent presentation. It occurred to me a lot of our own audience here might not know some of these statistics. And you have probably heard from the mayor that we're now the 20th largest city by population. Just 10 years ago, we were the 31st. So again, thinking about why we need a new code, we're not the same city we were in 1980. We're barely the same city we were 10 years ago. And in that 10 years, we've gained almost 50,000 households. So we have to continually take a look at where our city is going and do our best to guide that development. For example, where are 50,000 households going to live with more projected? And one reason Oklahoma City continues to grow is because we have a diverse job market. We have a relatively low cost of living, even all things considered. I know it's higher for a lot of people right now. And the city, as you are also aware, has made significant investment in quality of life improvements. And all of that has attracted new residents and new businesses. So there are three main ideas guiding our new code approach. One, as I mentioned earlier, we need different rules for different areas of the city. Our city is so big, we have so many different contexts. We need a code that supports each of those contexts. We already have commercial and mixed-use development kind of right next to neighborhoods. In many places in the city, we could do a better job to make sure that those where they meet, that privacy, noise, parking are better coordinated. Housing is a major focus. Again, with a growing population, with all the studies showing how much of a housing shortage we have, especially for 1 and 2 person households, especially for lower income folks. We need different rules that help us get the housing we need in a way that's compatible with our existing neighborhoods. So different rules for different areas of the city. Like I was saying, the comprehensive plan designated different areas of the city according to their character. The zoning regulations in general, if you're not familiar with zoning regulations, I think there's a recording of a previous Neighborhood Alliance presentation on Zoning 101. Zoning regulations guide where homes, shops, parks, and businesses should go. Updated zoning will ensure that new development fits the character of our neighborhoods and supports healthy, well-designed growth. The urban core of the city is a neighborhood-friendly area. If you live in the core, you know that. A neighborhood-friendly area that already blends housing options and small businesses while maintaining comfort, walkability, and neighborhood character. The updated zoning code will allow for a mix of commercial and mixed-use development near neighborhoods while protecting neighborhood privacy and character. Housing, a major focus. The new code will allow more types of housing in the urban core to help address housing needs, again, while protecting the character of neighborhoods. We think this can be accomplished by using gentle density. If you're not familiar with that term, it refers to small scale increases in housing, things like duplexes or small multi-unit homes or accessory dwellings even, things that fit into residential neighborhoods and providing more options without changing the overall feel of the area. We think that thoughtful development on vacant land or underutilized lots within existing neighborhoods can strengthen communities by revitalizing empty spaces and supporting local services. So next, we'll talk about why specific aspects of the zoning code, like parking, landscaping, and uses, why they specifically need to be modernized. And with that, I'll throw it to Marilyn.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Lisa was talking the big picture, 621 square miles. Now I'm going to go down to parking lots. I'm going to go down to a really fine grain level. Okay, so just stick with me. We've had workshops with you before, and we've over the last several years, and we've talked about density, and we've talked about the UM zones having patterns that allow you to choose different options for housing. We talked about accessory dwellings, which we eventually, the city council adopted. But this time, we're going to talk about parking, landscaping, and uses. And the reason this is a little different is because it affects the whole city. These are changes that would you'll notice in all parts of the city. And we're hoping that we already have the uses drafts out there for comment, and we're hoping that the parking and landscaping will catch up, maybe by the end of the year. So I'm hoping in this workshop that you'll learn enough to see what we're trying to do and be able to kind of review those with a more informed eye. So that's kind of the goal for tonight. So next slide, Lisa. So, all right, so let's start with parking, and bear with me because this is pretty detailed stuff. But so why do we need to modernize our parking standards or parking code? There's two main reasons. One is because Lisa already said that our zoning code dates back to 1980s. Well, in 1980s, we didn't have online shopping, online food ordering, e-bikes, parking apps, and all these things that we have now. Can we go back a slide? And so our code doesn't recognize all these things that are affecting the parking demand. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. And the second thing is we did a really great effort in 2007 to improve our landscaping code. And we got a lot of stuff about, where to plant the right trees and a lot of great stuff that we did in 2007. But we're seeing you can see it as you drive around that sometimes the landscaping does okay, but sometimes it's dying. It's not surviving. And so those are the main changes that we're looking at when we're revising the parking and landscape codes. So why do we care whether the trees survive or whether we get these huge paved areas like you see. Next slide, Lisa. So over the past 40 years, we've gotten a little bit smarter. So across the country, people have began to study the effects of these huge swaths of pavement and impervious cover, and especially parking lots. So in 2023, Oklahoma City got to be part of a pilot study. 9 cities were selected across the country. And I don't know if any of you were involved in this, but there were volunteers that went out and they had these little heat sensors on their car, and they took measurements in different areas of the city. And what we came up with was the heat map, which is on the left. And you can go and if you Google OKC and interactive heat map, you can find this. You can put in your address. You can see how hot your area is, or you can put in another address and play with the maps. Is kind of interesting. So, and I have the link here. We'll probably give Cassidy these slides to post, so you can click that link. But what we found out is that the biggest producers of heat in our city are parking lots and areas without trees. And so as you go across the slide, you'll see all the different, detrimental effects of impervious cover in our cities, negative health effects, flooding, water quality issues. And so let's dive deeper into each of these. So let's start with flooding, because we know that no one wants to have flooding around. So one tool that we have against urban flooding is and polluted stormwater runoff is trees. Well, we can see, when a lot floods, what we don't see is that pavement is hot unless it's winter, of course. But in the summer, in the spring and fall, it's hot and it heats up that water. And when it runs off, it takes all the junk in the parking lot, the oils and the grime that's in the parking lot, and it becomes hotter water, and it ends up in our streams, in our stream corridors, in eventually in our rivers. By the time it gets to the rivers, it might be diluted with not so hot water. But what happens with all of that is that when it heats up those creeks, the wildlife in there can't, that's not their normal temperature, and they can't survive. And when water rushes off these lots, we get it rips up the stream banks eventually. That is detrimental to more wildlife, and it's just a bad cycle. But trees can absorb as much as 20% of that stormwater passing through these paved areas. Now, it's not the total solution, but it is part of the solution. Is trees. Trees do great things for us. The next slide shows that also what we found out in this urban heat study. The left picture is that Sheridan Avenue there with some lovely street trees. And what we found out is that, number one, you see the purple, that's an area underneath the tree. It's still 122 degrees in the shade there. So pavement is hot. But you see the yellow area in the middle, it is like more than 20 degrees hotter without the tree. So the trees really help us cool our cities, and we found that out in the study. And part of the reason, okay, it's hot, but why do we really care about this? Ultimately, is that once that pavement heats up to 143 degrees during the day, it gets harder and harder for us to cool down at night. My daughter lives in Dallas. I go up there, and they have so much pavement that it's hot till midnight there in the summer. So if we don't cool down our pavement, it keeps hot. And then that gets us to the next slide, where that heat like sticks in the air longer. Lisa, the next slide. And it becomes like a dome that traps in the heat and traps in particulate matter. And so not only are we hotter, it's also harder for us to breathe. It affects our health. But trees can absorb also, they absorb water, but they also absorb that particulate matter. Probably like no other tool can do that. So trees are really cool. They do a lot of cool stuff. And I want you to look at the statement on the right-hand side of the slide. It says, large, healthy trees have the greatest per tree effects at pollution removal. So it's the larger trees that do the most work for us. So I want you to remember that as we start talking about the landscape code. So Lisa mentioned that, we have Plan OKC and it has the LUDA map, but it also has very specific goals and policy for us to use as we're rewriting the zoning code. The first one, conduct parking studies to develop standards based on land use, location, and demand. And really what that sentence saying, based on our demand in Oklahoma City, not the demand in Denver or Atlanta or wherever all these studies come from, but our own what's happening in OKC studies. Also, increase trees and landscape islands and parking lots. Pretty straightforward. Screen the parking lots to promote walkability. Like on the left-hand slide, you'll see there's landscaping around the parking lot, so it's nice to walk down that sidewalk. You're not walking right next to pavement. And encourage shared parking among adjacent developments so that we can, like, for example, like a church where people aren't there during the day, it might be that a restaurant could share, or next door, share that space, share that parking lot if they are in business at different times, and then we won't need extra parking lots. So those are the goals. Those are some of the main goals that Plan OKC told us to do. And then, let me stay on this slide a minute and talk about the parking studies, because we're like, I know you're thinking, wow, this is 2019. This has taken us a really long time. Well, part of what we did was these parking studies. And what we did is we looked at 12,000 parking lots in Oklahoma City. That's about half of the parking lots. And we studied, how much parking uses like restaurants are using, how much parking uses like a retail store, like Academy is using, and all that we categorize them into kind of buckets of parking needs in Oklahoma City so that we could see what's true for Oklahoma City. And then we also did a few studies on some lots to see how the same site, like we looked at Walgreens and CVS, how it is, how the parking is utilized at various times of day and in various parts of the city. Guess what we found? And I know y'all see it, is that the parking lots are underutilized. We know that, and around the country that's true, because of all these different changes that we've had in our society. So there's parking just sitting there empty. So that's what we found out. Next slide. So why is our code creating all this parking, and especially large parking lots? Well, because we're requiring them to do it. We require parking minimums. It's called parking minimums, and cities across the country do this too, where they say, if you're a restaurant, you got to have so many spaces per square feet, or if you're an office or an industrial use, you have to have a minimum number of spaces. And a lot of permitting holdups are because the developer, they don't need that many spaces. They don't want to build that many spaces, or they're trying to reuse an old building where that parking won't fit. And so Mike knows that all these things end up at Planning Commission, where we have to determine how much parking this use really needs. The second thing is that the banks do the same thing. When the banks are lending to people who want to start businesses, they're also requiring a certain number of spaces. Even if we lowered our parking code in Oklahoma City, the banks are still requiring spaces that are kind of back to 1950s standards, 1980s standards. They're slow to update their checklists. And so it's just creating this, this parking bonanza, I guess. And then the other thing is that when people build a new site or redo a parking lot, it's just easier to come and just pave the whole thing, right? It's harder to stop and put in landscaping and all this stuff. So this is why we get these, part of the reasons we get these huge parking lots. Now I know these were built many years ago. One is the left side is on Northwest Expressway in Portland. It's the IBC building, and then the right is Belle Isle. And if we went down and looked in street view at those lots, you'll see, especially on the IBC lot, that we have those little grassy islands. See how that's required, but there's no trees there in any of those islands. They're all either, if they were ever there, they're not there now, or they were never. This was planted before 2007, possibly. You see those little structures on the left, though. Those are really cool. Those are shade structures, and you can, park your car underneath the shades. Really nice for when it hails, but it's also really nice for preventing heat in parking lots. So you're going to see in the new code, yes, we want to require more trees and shade, but also you could do it by adding shade structures, because that especially white ones like that reflects the heat, gets rid of the heat that's sinking in the ground and then rising up later. The next thing, we do have some landscaping standards right now, and those were a lot created in 2007. We did a great job in 2007 updating our code. And you have to have a tree within 75 feet of every space. Medians with plantings are encouraged, but not required. But what's happening is that these trees, although the ones on the left look like a couple of them are doing pretty good, the area that we require for them to grow in is too small. That's what we're finding. And I know that's really detailed in the landscape code, but that's what we want to change, because you see in the middle picture, that's Whole Foods. They went above and beyond and did the nice landscape medians, but they only did them 5 feet wide. And you see on the right where the arrow is pointing that those roots are already beginning, and not already, I mean, these are 15 years old. It doesn't look like I don't know a lot about trees, but that tree probably never reached its maturity and height because it's growing in such a small area, and we'll see how long it's going to be able to make it with those roots not being covered, not having a place to keep going. Now, the other thing we have when we talk about flooding, this is a May Avenue parking lot over by Home Depot, I guess, and that floods often in big rains. But we do have a new a drainage ordinance, which is not part of the zoning code, but it will require parking lots, big parking lots like that, to have, you see on the right, at where it says 9th and Oklahoma, that's a new parking lot that was constructed there. And you see that big kind of grass, well, it looks like dirt in this picture, but now it's kind of covered with grass. It's called a detention area. And that will be required also it holds that water when it rains really hard for a while, so that it's not just immediately flooding off into the streets and taking all the oil with it and all that. It kind of sits in that detention area for a while and slowly trickles out.
Marilyn,
Yeah.
the space you're showing off of May Avenue, that's gotten so bad at the point they need sump pumps now, correct?
I don't know. We just happened to see it when it flooded. So
I was gonna say vaguely recall the S&B Burger talking about how they had to rent a sump pump to clear
Yeah.
that out.
Building gets water in it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See, this is, so we can't just go and pave over the world. Joel's saying I've seen them with sump pumps out there before. So there's obviously a problem there. So Public Works has tried to fix it with these detention areas. We're trying to also fix it with adding trees and giving the trees more space to survive and thrive and grow as tall as they should be. So next slide. So knowing all these things that took us a while to study and all compile together, we convened some landscape professionals from around Oklahoma City, and we're lucky to have a lot of really great landscape professionals in town. And they they told us, here's what you need to do. Because like I said, we did a nice update in 2007, but we need to go further. We need to ensure tree survivability. So on the right there, you see a big area with just one tree. That's better than having a lot of trees that don't have enough space to grow. Or even one tree in a small area. One tree in a big area is better, is what the landscape professionals told us. And if we plant trees in better conditions that can grow to maturity, then remember what we said, larger trees are the ones that do the most work in cleaning the CO2 out of the air. So we want all those things. Reducing urban heat by requiring these smaller parking blocks. So instead of having huge just swaths of concrete or pavement or asphalt, whatever they use, more required medians that break the parking lot up kind of into sections so that you can, so that water can absorb, section by section. Also, they said it's very important to provide flexible design options. So yes, we're requiring maybe more stuff, but we're giving them flexible options because we know that every site is different. We know that the soil conditions are different, that the layout of what they need to build on the site is different. So we've tried to give them options that they can choose from, like a menu of options. And then finally, clear, easy to read regulations. Right now, the parking lot landscaping is sort of traipsed through the landscaping chapter, and it's hard to find what you're looking for. It's hard to find what applies to you and your site. So the code would be much more organized to say, if you're doing this, here's your regulations. And also the code will be more, if you go on if you look for chapter 59 in OKC, the code is just a bunch of words, in online, and there are some clicky, you can click to certain things, but we want it very clicky, where you're going to click and you're going to see definitions, and you're going to be able to find your way through the code even on your phone a lot faster. So we need that too. Okay. So if we're doing all this stuff in the parking lots, well, why do we need to modernize our landscape code? We did it in 2007. What's the deal? What are we updating? So again, on the meeting we go.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a streetscape project. I know exactly what she's talking about. We realized that those trees were probably not going to survive forever, and the sidewalks are a nightmare over there. So they are redesigning it to put in more trees down the sidewalks so it's more accessible for more people.
Yeah, that was a hard decision, believe me.
Oh, the businesses struggled.
Yeah, but we didn't want those trees to be cut down either, but there'll be new trees on the side and then more room for cars to pass in the middle.
100 trees, I think they said.
Ooh. Okay, wait, that means we got to plant 100 more somewhere else. So also Plan OKC had specific things they wanted us to do, the landscape code. And we've heard from landscape professionals, we have lists of things they want us to do. But again, it's this mitigating flooding, mitigating the high heat, doing things like green roofs, preserving existing trees, expanding shade cover, which we talked about, and supporting things like urban gardens. And we've tried to do all that. This is that first one. It says Adapt OKC. That's our supplemental sustainability plan to Plan OKC that we did after Plan OKC. And then incentivize drought tolerant plants and utilize native Oklahoma vegetation, because if we use trees that are native to Oklahoma, then we don't need as much water, and they tend to do better than non-native trees. And also we don't want invasive trees to take over our we'll talk about the urban forest in a minute. And then preserve mature, healthy trees, incorporating them into your site design, and including, it's hard that we have to do a whole code to tell you how to take care of trees on the site when you're under construction, but there's a lot of people in and out on a construction site. A lot of people, do different things. They don't know about trees. I don't know about trees that much. So we have new rules on what to do with the trees that you're trying to protect during construction. And next slide. Okay, so what is the outcomes that we're shooting for? And I'm hoping when we release drafts, you'll see some of these things. We're trying to rebuild our urban forest because, and we have to do this every so often. We know we have ice storms that kill trees. We have all the salt that we put on the road is not good for trees. So we have to replenish it. The street trees and parking lot trees are not going to live forever if they live 15 years or so, like Cassidy was saying in those medians on 23rd. That's good. But we want them to live beyond 5 years, which a lot of them are not. So we want to beautify also the city to increase the property values and have a nice, city appearance. We got the Olympics coming. We got a lot of people coming to visit. We want it to look good. And we want to support that wellness and mental health, like we talked about. Trees, not only they help us breathe, but they make us happier. There are studies on this. You can look it up. That if there's even one tree, your mental health is a lot better than if there's none. And then finally, support our wildlife and habitat because they like the trees too. So the next set of outcomes is spreading those trees and shrubs throughout the site. We don't, in the current landscape code, we just don't have enough teeth to get street trees like this on every street. Increase the soil volume. You see how much area that tree has to grow. You see how big it got. This is over, I guess it's expand. I don't know what they're doing with this campus, but I hope that tree stays there. And so increasing the soil volume, protecting the trees during construction, and then this new concept that we're calling sensitive edge buffers. And this is what will be interesting to Neighborhood Alliance folks on the next slide, is this new concept called the sensitive edge buffers. And so a lot of times we have where a house backs right up to the commercial, and it's not very pleasant. Usually right now you just have to put up a fence and a 5-foot little, bushes or something, but on the commercial side, not on the residence side, but on the commercial side. And that doesn't really do that well either because it's only in a 5-foot buffer. It also doesn't have enough soil volume to really thrive. So sometimes they do, but look at McKinney on the right in Texas. That is a house next to a daycare. And so I'm sure it's loud when they come out to play, and they have trees and fences. The city, we can have fences. We have rules about fences, but we should be more about requiring the trees. And then if you want to put up a fence, that's your prerogative, but right now it's kind of the flip side. We require fences and not so much landscaping. So we're going to try and flip that so that if you are next to a commercial thing, look how nice. It's not too bad. I don't know how loud that is, but surely the trees buffer some of that sound really well. So you'll see that in the new code. Okay, now we're going to switch gears. Not as much fun as trees. This is what we call our uses section. This is the one that's already out for review. I can send Cassidy the link because people probably forgot. It's kind of been out there since August. We haven't really had any.
Somebody said fences are better.
And we have a lot of a lot of arguments for that. But what we're saying is we need both.
Thursday.
We need both. We need fences and landscaping. And sometimes we only get the fences. And the fences are often wood and they just deteriorate. You can go all over town and just find deteriorated fences. But we can definitely, we're going to have that debate on, we're requiring, fences are part of the buffer, a fence or a wall. Depending on what you're next to and the situation. But so we will require fences. Yeah. Okay, so this is uses. Hang in there with me. It's just a couple more slides. So what are uses? What is that? So um, the uses define residential, commercial, and industrial categories so that they can be classified for zoning. So we talked about, kind of in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, you think about the New York City tenement houses where they were right next to industrial and there was fires, people died, it was bad. So we said, okay, we went the other way. We need to completely put residential over here and put commercial over here and industrial over here. And what happened was that people then, once they got cars, they had to drive really far from their R1 neighborhood to their work, or they had to drive really far to the grocery store, or they had to drive. So there's not your like neighborhood corner store anymore because it's not allowed in R1. Yeah. Mike's saying he wants specific language on the plats that they have to be repaired when they start to deteriorate. That would be good. So the uses it seems kind of boring. I think it's very fascinating, the uses, but it's the backbone of the code because it relates to all other parts of the code, the parking, landscaping, this compatibility, and what can be built where. So the uses kind of make the code hang together. Next slide. So what we do around here is a lot of the picture on the right. This is a square peg round hole, because our uses also are from the 1980s, maybe even earlier than that. And if you read through the list of uses, you kind of start to giggle because you're like, what is that? Like, what is this word? I don't even know what that word means anymore. But then we get new uses that come in, like scooters. When they came in, they were coffee drive-through only, and there was no category for them because the fast food category said you had to have indoor and outdoor service, which they don't have any indoor service. So what is this? So they kind of got put in the grocery store food use, but there just wasn't really regulations for them or anything in the code. And same thing, like we have these data centers. We just found out about that like 6 months ago. So we're writing a use for data centers. We didn't even have a definition for that. So it's been a long time, and we really need to update this code. So we're spending too much time trying to tear our hair out and figure out where these new stuff, how it can fit into the code. And then finally, we have these things called use regulations, where, like, if we have a data center, it would have a whole page of regulations just for data centers and what you need to do if you're a data center. So our use regulations are also not up to date. Okay, so here's some examples of some of these uses. I talked about scooters. That definition of fast food restaurant is too narrow for them. Now, some uses are outdated. Cassidy is going to do a poll to see if any of you know what this middle picture is called a ticket agency.
It's so outdated. I didn't realize what they were asking me to do when I originally went to put the question
So
together.
answer a poll. I want to see how many people know what this
I was
is.
pulling it up, but there it is. Have any of you ever stood in line all night to buy concert, sport, or show tickets?
In the last 10, 15 years?
Ever.
No, ever.
Oh,
Ever in your
okay.
life. How many in your life have done
almost
have
50.
done what's in that middle picture there?
Do you remember the last thing you stood in line for?
Mhm.
All right, perfect. So it looks like, yeah. So, well, yeah, that looks about right.
What's our percent? Can we see it?
35. Sorry, I thought you could see it. Give me just a second. So 35% said yes and 65% said no.
Okay. So 2/3 of our people on this call don't even know what that is. But it was kind of a nasty use back
Does
in the
it have
day
to be a
because
building?
do what?
Does it have to be a building that you stood in front of? Like,
Y-
couldn't be like the amphitheater or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, wherever they sold tickets, but they had these things called ticket agencies,
Oh, yeah,
and
okay.
yeah, and you would go. It was usually a building. Sometimes it had a walk-up. I think these have walk-up windows.
Mhm.
And you still might go like to the Civic Center and walk up to a window and buy a ticket, but these were like stand in line ticket agencies, and people would be there all night and camping, and I'm sure we were really loud. I did it, and it was not a fun use to have next to residential, right? And so we have this whole category it's called personal services general, where we put all the uses like this that we don't like. And it's like crazy. It's like tattoo parlors and massage therapists and ticket agencies, and it's all these things. Like we can just throw out that whole category now, right? Because we buy our tickets online now. This use doesn't even exist anymore, right? So it just shows you how outdated some of our stuff is.
I was always kind of curious what personal services general and restricted meant because that is so vague.
Well, the general, you would think general would be like larger uses, more egregious
Right.
uses, but they're just things we don't like over the years that we didn't like. We stuffed them into that use. Anyway, so we can get rid of ticket agency, and then some uses are like too specific, like a job agency. I don't know if at one time that was like something weird that we had to have a separate use for, but it's just an office, or it's not even an office. We were on LinkedIn getting jobs, right? Like it's just these are just kind of like funny things to show you that it's like the uses that we have now. Some are okay, some work, but there's many that we can just get rid of. And we also need to add a lot of new uses that we don't have, like data centers. So the next slide. And then, so what happens when we can't find categories for these uses is they end up at Planning Commission with Mike Privet trying to decide on the fly what uses are going to be allowed on this one particular lot. And sometimes we'll say, well, you can have, like retail sales, but not marijuana, or you can have this, but not that. And, so it's a tailored thing, and that works. But if we would just update our uses, a lot of these PUDs and SPUDs would go away, because a lot of PUDs and SPUDs are about tailoring uses for things that we don't even have anymore. So we have 4,000 of these, what we call PUDs and SPUDs. And the majority of those are trying to square peg round hole our current use categories. And they go to our permitting department first, and they sit there for a couple of weeks trying to scratch their head and figure out, whether that's allowed in that zone or what it's most like. And that's just a waste of time for developers and for small business owners. And so we really want to get these uses updated really quick. And that they're already out there. I'll send Casey the link if you want to check them out, read through them. But it's a little tedious, but it's also kind of fun too.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That was maybe more than you ever thought you would need or want to know about uses. But we're happy to answer any questions.
We've
I
got
will
a couple
call.
in the chat in a hand. Sorry.
Yeah. Cassidy, will you kind of moderate?
Yeah. So, John, I'll get to you in just a second. Daniel, yes, we're gonna create a YouTube video of this and we'll send it out. But Joel said that rather than regulating specific uses, it might be better to regulate outcomes like noise emissions, light, noxious odors, etc., building form, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's also part of the use regulations here. I'm going to put let me see, I'm going to say.
Oh,
Link.
to the use regulations review. Yes, I think we can probably get that.
I'm going to put the link in here, but we'll send it also.
And I'll make sure to get it attached to the YouTube video as well. John, you had a question?
Well, you all gave such a good presentation that my question, I think, is evolved into sharing what works so well in Central Park and making sure that we don't lose any of it. Back in the 80s around here, it looked like the world was coming to an end. We had burned out crack houses all over the place. Some people strapped on guns. Others of us, we would go and we'd, mentor the kids growing up in the crack houses, and we'd make community gardens and we'd take them out planting trees. And you can see now, even though that was not necessarily popular back in the 80s, and code enforcement had to try to get a balance. But now it is, I don't know, I haven't had a complaint with a code enforcement officer since I guess Sam Bowman took office, and I haven't had any complaints with neighbors or anything like that. The whole community is supportive of planting these trees, of having these community gardens and things like that. So I hope we don't try to ever get back to micromanaging what you can do in a garden.
Yeah, we're actually trying to expand that definition. There's something called rank weeds, and they want you to mow your yard to a certain inch height and all this stuff. So we're meeting as we speak with development services to try and come to an agreement as to, even if you want to plant that, you can plant a community garden, you can plant a home garden in your front yard. But the question is, and we say we exempt food from having to be mowed and things like that. But a lot of people want to do like pollinator gardens for butterflies and things like that. And yeah, code enforcement gets a little edgy because they're in another part of the code, it says, that's a nuisance. So we're working with that. That'll be part of the code update to try and
Great.
and I appreciate all your efforts in that garden. So, and also we have a whole new urban agriculture, a lot more information about urban agriculture and how you can do that and where you can do that. Even being able to sell your vegetables in your driveway.
Yeah. I also appreciate what you all are doing on housing. The only problem I have with Central Park today is we need more poor people and more people of color. And so I would like to see housing expanded so that we can get the diversity back to the way it was.
Yeah, and I think that those are lovely sentiments. And I will say, as somebody that does not live far from you, I got hit this summer, last summer, as for just some slightly taller plants because they were pollinators. So it is nice to see that there are some changes coming for that because I was shocked to be told I needed to mow my own lawn for some plants. So Mary said, can you update use of LED lights on houses that intrude more than prior lights? The city fixed the lighting ordinance in 2020, didn't they?
I don't remember that, but we will be touching the lighting section in the code update. And no, we haven't had too much input on it yet. So this is
this is good input. We are looking, I know the rural areas have asked us to, to tap down the lights out there because they want what they call like night sky. They want to be able to see the stars and all that. So we're working on that. This has come up before where people are putting both security cameras and these big LED lights on their houses, and neighbors are getting not very happy about being filmed, I guess. So we might, we need to talk more about that, Cassidy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we hear somewhat often. I know that I've even been at meetings with neighborhoods before Planning Commission, where they're talking with David Box and the conversation about lights will come up. And he had mentioned that they had updated some of the lighting code so it couldn't shine into homes or yards. They had to be down, which is why I thought we had updated it. At least
we didn't, but it's possible development services.
There is the requirement that they need to be shielded.
Okay.
Whether it's enough, whether it's robust enough is what we'll be looking at.
Okay, perfect. And then she also wanted to know who would be responsible for natural disasters when it comes to trees in the required parking lots. Would it be the person or the owner of the parking lot?
I think it's the owner of the parking lot. I think though,
Yes.
Mary, I think maybe what you're really asking is like, if by requiring many more trees, are we increasing the chances that there might be tree damage on a car in the lot? Um, the Part of the reason we're updating parking lot landscaping and the landscaping code, especially for tree planting that Marilyn was describing, was to make sure that uh, trees can survive long term. So obviously, we were living in Oklahoma, and there could be any number of storms, but we know from all of the data and research that reducing paving and shading the paving we have is really that important. It's so much of a priority. Um,
Yeah, and there's
that
a grace period in there for having to replant trees that you lost in disaster. It gives you a little more time to not be in zoning violation if like all the trees were wiped out. But
Absolutely. Francis, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to go ahead and jump back to landscaping. If we can keep in mind sight lines, I know sight lines are big in planning as we talk about building and fences and stuff, but there's been several instances where I've had to pull 3/4 of my car out to get by the plants that are planted into medians in these parking lots. And so it'd be nice, as people consider the big trees are nice, but size has got to be looked at immediately. If notice that most of these items are made right where parking lots either pull into a main street or into the main street through the parking lot, so you really got to stick your nose out to see. So I didn't realize back in when I was working planning meetings that there was a lot of talk about points for landscaping, and of course, the bigger plants got bigger points, but some need to think about the adult size of whatever's planted, where
right.
it's going to be near the site triangle, and also look at writing into these PUDs for continued care and trimming of these as they may go into the site triangles.
Okay.
Yeah, and one part of, we will look at that, Francis. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
We, as part of the updated landscaping, we are looking at, we're trying to make sure we have enough teeth regarding enforcement. So one, we're trying to make sure that the planting rules set everything up for long-term success, number one. Number two, if required planting, specifically trees, if they die or are damaged, that they can we
Yeah.
have more teeth to get them replaced.
There were just a couple of things in those slides there when I was talking about the tall grass. I don't know if it was Pampas grass or it was one slide that had a bunch of sidewalk and a bunch of purple flowers. If those purple flowers went all the way to the curb, they would run a problem for a driveway, like that kind of grass on the left.
Yeah.
Or yeah,
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful
yeah.
landscaping, but if that goes all the way to the curb, realize some people do drive cars and they're lower, not an SUV.
Yes, and we there are rules for what you can plant in the site triangle, but the other thing that might help, not necessarily in that picture on the left, is that we're looking at where you put your driveways
Right.
more carefully, because the distance from the intersection, that needs to be more clear and more thought out, and how many driveways you can have on your site. And so that might help with being able to see around things.
And I want to know if I would be allowed to go to one off-topic item while I have some planner's ears or not.
It's Marilyn, Lisa.
Okay,
sorry.
well,
Try us.
being in the age 65 plus category, it'd be nice to have some developers build a 55 plus communities, not any kind of care or anything we're talking about. Um, if you want to look up a perfect example, what I'm talking about is on top of the world in California. There's two through six plexes of homes put together in the 1,000 1,800 foot square range. And at this point in time, even though I got a little garden going, and I could care less about mowing my lawn or painting my house or putting a roof on it. So unfortunately, there's not enough room in the inner circle there to build this kind of thing. But as there's plenty of room for smaller versions of these things. And I'm talking a buying, owning, not a renting type situation.
I believe I've seen a couple like the Abbey, but they're out of the core.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, one main point of the code update is to allow for increased housing options because we know smaller household sizes, 1 and 2 person households, and older households they want smaller options. They want smaller yards. And in many cases, they want to live in the neighborhood that they've been living in. They don't want to move to a different part of the city. So the new code.
Go back to that cottage court picture that we showed. I mean, this is kind of an idyllic one, but seniors are asking for this. Down at the bottom right there, where you sort of have courts, kind of bungalows in a proximity to each other, and then everybody can go out in the middle and have a potluck or.
Because right now, like the code has every residential zone has a minimum lot size.
Right.
For example, but maybe, you don't want that big of a lot.
No, and one of the things also would be single story would be nice too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to say, are we looking at more universal design standards for those who might have, differently abled situations like a wheelchair or can't get around as well in our kind of code update?
Well, the building code requires that. So
I just figured it was a great time to try to marry that.
The building code does that.
And this would be also, condo-wise, a good thing for mixed use with shops and restaurants on the bottom and then small condos on the top.
So Chris said bug lights glow in the yellow part of the spectrum in order to not attract bugs like blue-toned LED lights can. Could be worth exploring how to have more of these in parking lots and streets.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Okay.
There were a lot of good comments. I appreciate all of the comments that everybody is making. It helps us.
Requirements. Commissioner Privet says during the tree discussion, I had a thought that I was reminded of earlier today on a walk with my dog. Are we keeping the tree requirement per lots in subdivision? Is there some way it can be more specific? Currently, a 2 tree minimum is required that I'm aware of. Some of these lot sizes, getting 2 trees is not a smart thing. I see these lovely sidewalks that were just built being trip hazards a few years from now once the trees are maturing. That's if those trees survive. He likes trees, just not enough for the sake of, not trees for the sake of it.
So right now the code, Mike, is only 1 tree per lot on a residential lot.
Why is ideal planting 2 trees per lot on maybe a 50-foot wide lot?
What you mean? It's not wide enough to plant a tree?
Right. Well, I just assume that it's required. They're putting 2
trees.
You're
saying they wouldn't be doing it if it weren't required.
Well, one tree is required by us. Maybe that HOA required 2. I don't know, but only 1 is required by us. But we will require that probably 2 to 3 trees now, based on how much parking you provide. And we didn't get into the whole how we're redoing the parking, but So
Okay.
you would have to do more trees, but we want one of those trees closer to the sidewalk. Now, we need to talk about
Between the
maturity and
sidewalk
the
and the
roots.
street, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like 4 feet.
Yeah, but there's street trees that can, that have certain type of
Deeper
roots.
roots, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know what you're
So,
talking about. It seems like there's been some really narrow lots lately where it almost felt like the obligation of two trees was kind of dictated by planning. But when you look at the lot, by the time you build the house with the pipes, like there's just not room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have drawn exactly what you guys are describing. We've drawn it in-house in meetings because it's not just it's the tree, the driveway, and the garbage can.
Right.
And all of that has dimensional
yeah.
needs.
And only one of the trees would have to be near the sidewalk. The others can be anywhere on the lot. You could put them in your backyard, your side yard, wherever.
Okay,
Wherever
well,
is.
maybe that's it. I knew that the one tree in the front was required, but maybe it's a deal where the
No,
lot's not big enough that they can't get it in the back.
well, no. There's only one tree required per lot. There's no locational requirements. You can put it anywhere they want.
Right.
I guess the developers put it in the front yard. I don't know why they do that. They don't have to.
Okay, well, this
Sure.
But
specific one I know is Ideal Homes Development, so
yeah,
maybe I'll talk
maybe
to them about
something.
I
that and just
was
see.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say, I know there's one or two, and I won't say who is building, and I don't always know who's building them, but there are a number of newer HOAs where every year they send out a form saying, "Oh, if you had a tree die, like this is your replacement time. Get your
Oh,
tree."
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
uh,
I have a Bradford pear and I want that thing to die like 20 years ago, but
best
that
way
yeah.
to
doesn't.
remove that's the six
You're
inch
lucky
cut
it's
at the
lasted.
bottom. So,
Yeah.
Daniel's had his hand up for a while.
Yes.
Yes, I had a question about uh, kind of looking at like some flexibility maybe on the other end of uses where for 21 to 35-year-olds, some people are interested in living closer to the entertainment and bars that they go to. So, would there be room in the mixed use for adding on housing near existing bars, making bar neighborhoods, and then putting some other amenities like cafes within neighborhoods, while allowing flexibility for the people that are already there as a way to like make the city safer, especially in the bar sense.
Okay, so that you can walk home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you,
Yeah,
sorry,
there'll be more housing. There'll be housing will be allowed in our mixed use zones for sure. And
I
then
think, yeah.
in neighborhood in development next to neighborhoods. So yeah, I'm gonna look. I haven't heard the term bar neighborhoods, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, I think you've coined a new planning concept.
I know it makes
Dan,
sense.
thanks.
I did come up with it
Barberhoods.
just now.
I
I
was
like
gonna
it.
ask
I
if
like
you were, so I'm glad you clarified. My question was gonna be, were you asking for like the bars to be on the outskirts of neighborhoods? You don't mean like a bar like in the middle of a block of houses, correct?
We'd have to change state law for that to be
Ah,
possible, I think.
Well, they can't be
I have
within
been
churches and schools.
I have been to Nashville, and I remembered there was at least one where there was a huge apartment complex, and then in the basement there was a bar there. And that seemed like a very safe way for people to get home. As and I see like that could be very useful in building around there to allow for what for the different uses different people want
Yeah.
and to make the state a safer place.
Okay, well, I will say that you'll find in our zoning code now, and we can have a discussion about it, but a bar requires a special permit that has to be approved by council. The police asked for this so that if anything gets too rowdy, they could have a mechanism to shut it down if it was really bad. But So a bar would be, you could try and get that zoning in a mixed use development. And it would just have to be approved by planning commission and city council to have that use in there, but it wouldn't be not allowed.
And then on the other spectrum, because it's kind of connected, could neighborhood cafes be allowed in this new paradigm, I guess?
Say that again.
A neighborhood cafe, a cafe probably within the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Mid-block.
Maybe not within the neighborhood.
Not
Like
right in the middle of the neighborhood, but right adjacent to the neighborhood. We have, Daniel, we have looked at that, trying to, and we've talked about it at various focus groups because, some people are like, well, yeah, I would love just to walk down to just walk to the next block and there'd be a coffee shop, kind of in someone's house, like Cuppies and Joe, yes. That seems like it would be great in the middle of the block. But then other folks feel, that's too intrusive regarding specifically parking. But there's also other uses like, there's already neighborhood businesses, like hairstylists and accountants, that kind of thing, home businesses.
But Lisa, we are trying to promote that more because we've created a new category called neighborhood business, and it limits the size of the business, so it's more neighborhood friendly. I think it's like no more than 3,000 square feet, and so that might be allowed everywhere, whereas like an academy would only be allowed on like a large street. So we're trying to have these smaller, like you're talking about, allowed in more places. Whether it would be allowed in the middle of the block, I doubt it, but maybe on the corner of a neighborhood where it's getting closer to the busier streets, or the like the Plaza District or something like that, then yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, because I'm seeing more comments. Whoever said running hot water, laundromats, like we've got one not too far from my house. That makes sense. Dry cleaners, I think, have a special situation because of the chemicals they use, correct?
Well, so that's another thing that's not modern about our code is that laundry services it's his own special use, because it used to be that the neighborhood laundry did their own laundry there with chemicals and all kinds of stuff, right? But now a dry cleaner is mostly just a drop-off store, right? So the drop-off store, and it's usually really tiny, so that would become part of that neighborhood business. So I could have a drop-off thing, but then the actual cleaning goes to the plant.
Right.
But there are eco plant. There are plants that do it without chemicals. So we're trying to kind of walk that line of letting them be in more places, but so sort of separating out laundry services, we get rid of that thing, and we'd say, dry cleaners is just part of like personal services, and the big place where all the laundry's done that's industrial.
And I'm glad to hear and see. It looks like there's quite a bit of interest that in this mixed use walkable neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And it looks like a lot of people at least see the benefits of, hey, why can't I just walk over to the coffee shop to pick up my dry cleaning, to the bar, and walking, when we're saying in the neighborhood, I mean, to walk 3 blocks, to walk maybe 5 or 6 blocks to the cafe, to the club, that's still pretty close in my book.
I mean, I have literally everything that was just listed, as you know, Lisa, within not even 10 blocks of my house, and it is fantastic. I have.
Yeah, I live at near 23rd and Penn for everyone's information. And one reason we live there is we can walk, if I want to walk to Walmart grocery, I walk to Walmart grocery. Walk to Mazzio's to get a pizza, that's why I choose to live there because
JD
I
lives in my
like being close to stuff.
I was gonna say JD lives in my neighborhood. She's saying that we need just a small grocery and we'd be set. We have, I mean, dentists and everything. So, what are your thoughts? Somebody had talked about, they bought a neighborhood that's single family dwelling. They don't want their neighbors building housing behind them without a notice or chance to object. And there's plenty of other places to build housing. But then they mentioned the inner city just can't support and will not support more housing because of infrastructure, and the streets are not designed in the inner city for a zillion cars. What is your response to that?
Sure. Well, that's part of why we've been talking about gentle density. When we say increased housing types, we're saying things like a duplex, like an accessory dwelling, which we already got adopted, a duplex, triplex, smaller single family homes, the cottage courts that are shown on this image. We're saying, smaller. We're not talking about apartment, big apartment building. And we're talking a lot of little things that if they match, the setback requirements, height requirements of neighborhoods, then they should fit in and match the context. Now, I do also want to say on this point, part of skipping ahead on hopefully a lot of people here have seen this advertisement for a big neighborhood discussion we're hosting on March 10th at the Belle Isle Library. That is where we are going to do some live surveys to get to what people's concerns are. We've already heard a lot of them. We've been working on this since 2019, but we want to hear again what people's concerns are, and we want to look at some ways, be very specific about some ways those concerns might be addressed in the zoning code specific to your neighborhood. So in this meeting, we're going to distribute surveys. We're going to ask people to identify what neighborhood they live in, so that we can find out, okay, so for this neighborhood, here are their concerns. Here is how they think those concerns might be addressed. For example, noticing, public noticing might be one of the ways your neighborhood feels that additional housing types could be allowed in your neighborhood. So please plan to attend that. If you can't attend, we will, sometime after the meeting, we will distribute the same survey we did at the meeting. It might have some modifications because we won't be there to administer it or explain it, but we do want to make it more broadly available so that if you're not able to come on the 10th, you can still give input.
And I want to add that we're not going to put gentle density everywhere. There's certain places where it goes, and it's not going to be like right next to you in a single family neighborhood necessarily, except for like duplexes and accessory dwellings. The gentle density and the bigger projects have to go nearer to busier streets. They can't, or where there's alleys or corner lots where there's double access. So it won't be going everywhere. It'll be contained.
And to Daniel's point, yes, Daniel, the proximity to transit will be a cue for allowing more of this type of density.
I believe the city is exploring and has maybe gotten a grant on transit-oriented development, correct?
Yeah, for Classen Boulevard. Yeah, that's going to be kicking off here in a couple months.
Yep.
And we have a regional transit authority.
Yep.
Oh, I forget about
Whether they
that.
actually do anything, we have
One
one.
transit, if you will. So Mary has a good question. How about park and rides near, or more park and rides near bus lines? A good use of parking lot access. It would be useful when bus times are lengthened and maybe slight tax relief, for a business if they would allow a park and ride in their lot.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
that's a great
Great
idea.
idea. Let's see. Oh, Walter, yeah, build up public transportation. So yes, a putt or spud can change density in your neighborhood, but that's going to be different from this, I believe.
We're trying to get out, we're always going to have PUDs and SPUDs because there's just always something that there's always a special case, we need to be able to respond to special cases, but we're hoping that the new zones will be you won't need a SPUD anymore in PUD because you'll have the uses you need, correct? You'll have, parking. We won't require as much parking of you and all this. So hopefully we won't have as many of these to talk about.
Yeah, and
We'll let Mike go home
I was
earlier.
going to say, Commissioner Privet loves a 5-hour meeting with 100 protest letters. What are you talking about?
and this will also help me address a concern from someone about that there's no notice and no chance to object. Um, one one reason we don't believe that PUDs and SPUDs need to be relied on so heavily is, so we've looked at, I mean, Marilyn, when did you start with the city? Like 7 years ago, six or
At least,
Marilyn has looked, Marilyn has cataloged every single SPUD that has come through. Mike, have you been on Planning Commission all that time?
Since 2017.
Okay, there you go. So we
predates me.
know for when Marilyn was talking about the sensitive edge buffers, we know what Planning Commission's requiring. We know the fence height, we know the number of trees, we know, the distance from the property line, the setback. We know all of that, right? We know, what else do we know, Marilyn? We know, what
Buffers,
uses, we know
uses,
specifically, back to the uses discussion, we know specifically what uses are not allowed, adjacent to residential. We know how parking is relaxed or not relaxed. We know all of these things. And we know we can make new development extremely predictable by embedding these things in the code, even more predictable than Planning Commission, because we know just kind of there's so much going on at Planning Commission, right? There's so many cases and some provisions, I mean, they're forgotten or there hasn't been time to study them, but we have been studying them for the code update, and we can embed them so it can be highly predictable for neighbors.
And I want to add on March 10th that because there was a comment about that we wouldn't have any opportunity to voice our opinions anymore. We are talking about tools for the urban medium where you could still, have a voice about, building demolitions and certain types of developments that might go, near your street. So we're looking at tools for that. And that's what we're going to discuss on March 10th. Like what tools do we have and what could we do?
And some of those tools like design review, which we'll be discussing on March 10th, some of those tools do come with public notice. That's what we want to know, what neighborhoods want public notice. It seems like from some of the comments, people think that it's clear. I'm telling you, it's not. I mean, we've talked to thousands of residents, and folks in the same neighborhood will tell us, yes, I'm good with this, and other folks will tell us they're not good with that. So that's what we're trying. We're trying to find the sweet spot for everyone. And to do that, we need everyone to come to March 10th. If you can't come to March 10th, we need everyone to take the subsequent surveys.
And we'll be able to send
So-
that out to anybody in
Yes.
medium from
On the, yes. And Cassidy, it looks like a lot of people are having to leave, so I wanted
Yeah.
to wrap things up maybe
Yeah.
with
And I had one question just after talking with Councilman Cooper the other day before you do that, just because I think this number was so interesting. It's been 9 months since we've passed the accessory dwelling ordinance. How many units have had permits filed?
I haven't looked it up lately. When I looked it up in October, it was 7.
That's the number he gave me. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a lot. Just so if
yeah, we were like, we were going to start somewhere. We're going to start somewhere. I mean, that's all, but we always said it wasn't going to be the solution. It was just going to be, a part of the bigger puzzle.
oh, you had one more question, but I know y'all want to wrap up. We're about 4 minutes over. So,
Yeah.
Daniel.
Yeah, so again, okay, so Cassidy has said when we get the larger survey, we'll send it out to the group.
I mean, we can blast it to all urban medium if you want.
Okay. You can go online now. We have a reimagined code update website. If you've been to our old one, we have a reimagined one at vision.okc.gov. And there's a lot more information and places to leave feedback on that website. You can also always email codeupdate@okc.gov with, I mean, really, truly, just any random thought you might have, something as you're going through your daily life and work, something that catches your attention that you think, hey, that's really working, or hey, that is not working.
Yeah, send us pictures. We love pictures.
Yeah, pictures. Yeah, anything. We want to have it. So, thank you, everyone, for spending your evening with us.
Absolutely. If y'all have any questions, their email addresses there's the code update email. I'm not going to give you their email addresses. And then if you have anything you ever need from the Neighborhood Alliance, whether you're interested in learning how to organize or you just have any kind of questions, feel free to reach out to our office. I believe you've all got my email because I sent the link out. But other than that, have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.